Here's the thing. 2023 was a year full of excellent movies, and many of my favorite YouTubers made videos listing and sometimes ranking their favorite movies from last year, but my thing is, they're all pretty similar, and of course they would be. Everybody knows that Oppenheimer is great, so of course it would be high on everyone's list. But I noticed that many of these lists were also missing many of my favorite movies, so I decided to make my own list. My favorite movies of 2023 that aren't those handful of movies that all the other YouTubers love. And that's not to say I didn't like Poor Things or Killers of the Flower Moon, but they've been talked to death, and these have not. But real quick, obviously, I liked Oppenheimer, Poor Things, Spider-Verse, Anatomy of a Fall, Zone of Interest, Barbie, The Holdovers, Past Lives, Killers of the Flower Moon, Air, Blackberry Dream Scenario, and of course, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is tied for my favorite movie of 2023. Also, I have not yet seen Godzilla Minus One, but I want to. I didn't catch the theatrical run, and because of the other Godzilla movie, apparently they're not releasing it on home video for a bit. But let's start with one of mine, and I think you'll see what I mean. I have 5. This is number 1. People love to complain that studios don't make low to mid-budget comedies anymore. Well, I think sometimes that's true. It was not in 2023, because 2023 saw the release of many comedies budgeted somewhere between $5 and $15 million. You had The Blackening, a horror comedy I found very entertaining. Bottoms, a movie I respect but just was not my cup of tea. Dix the Musical, a thoroughly weird satire with a bunch of pretty catchy songs. And Please Don't Destroy the Treasure of Foggy Mountain, a comedy with the same spirit as Hot Rod, taking a shot at every joke no matter how dumb. And enough got me for it to be a good time. But my favorite low to mid-budget comedy of 2023 was absolutely Theater Camp. First of all, and I can say this because I was a theater kid, theater kids are silly, and they're not just silly, they take themselves completely seriously. Nothing is funnier than those two things. The movie started with a short film directed by Nick Lieberman and written by Lieberman, as well as Noel Galvin, who played Glenn, the stage manager in the theatrical version, and Molly Gordon, who played Rebecca Diane, one of the counselors who moonlights as a medium. I know this movie is not for everyone. I think you can enjoy it if you never did theater, but if you did, it hits. The different types of show kids, instructors, exercises, impromptu performances. I can't think of another movie that so clearly gets at what it's like to be in a drama program. And on top of that, the performances are wonderful. And in my eyes, a big part of why they work has to do with everyone's commitment to playing an idiot. Molly Gordon is so funny. One of the great undervalued young talents. And I am no huge fan of Ben Platt, but goddamn did he win me over with this one. Like sometimes you see a big actor in roles like 30-year-old Evan Hansen and you don't think they get it. But then you see him in a role like this and you think, oh wait, they must get it. You cannot make fun of a star with a giant ego if you do not recognize what is funny about that. And you cannot do that while also being oblivious to those qualities in yourself. That all goes to say, this role made me like Ben Platt, which way to go. And my favorite performance comes from Jimmy Tatro, Dylan Maxwell himself. He plays Troy, the son of the camp's founder, who needs to step in and manage the camp in her absence, even though he has no idea what any of this is, let alone how it can make money. His character is a perfect balance to all of these other goofballs. And the whole thing really works because he's got a ton of heart and this really sweet arc about understanding why camps like this mean so much to so many people. And if that's not enough, oh hey, look, it's Ayo Edebiri in a role that is both fun and could totally be cut. You got Nathan Lee Graham, aka Zoolander's Todd, Patty Harrison, Carl from Succession, and a bunch of really talented kids. Because yeah, they can sing and dance, but also they have incredible comedic timing. All of this comes together in a tight little mockumentary package, which means we're cutting to silly reactions, match cutting some bad decisions to immediate consequences. It's that editing that makes sure every joke gets room to breathe, but you do not hang on any of them for too long. I don't really like reviewing comedies because it comes down to saying the jokes are funny, but they are, and the characters all feel incredibly real. And at just over 90 minutes, I dare someone to not have any fun with it. So yeah, one of my movies of 2023 is Theater Camp, the incredibly successful mid-budget comedy. Number 2. But that didn't mean 2023 did not have any room for actual bigger budget comedies. Obviously, Barbie, the highest grossing movie of 2023, was mostly a comedy. Then you've got the inexplicably successful rom-com Anyone But You, but 2023 also brought us a funny rom-com in my favorite bigger budget comedy of 2023, No Hard Feelings. Now, I would say this one swings way more calm than rom, but still, it gets as close to a rom-com as you get these days. And it's very R-rated, so if you're not cool with that, then this isn't for you. Just feel free to skip this bit of the video. But for everyone still with me here, here's the premise. Jennifer Lawrence plays Maddie, a surfer who lives in a beach town on Long Island and needs to come up with cash quickly, so she answers a very strange Craigslist ad put out by some parents who want a woman to date their 19-year-old son Percy before he goes off to college because he's socially awkward and they think this will help. So right off the bat, this premise is insane, but it sort of actually happened. At least the Craigslist ad existed. We don't know if anybody responded, but that is just the first 15 minutes of the movie. The rest of the time is spent with Maddie as she unsuccessfully tries to woo Percy and then has to deal with the consequences of succeeding. So right off the bat, yes, while it's not technically illegal, Maddie, a woman in her early 30s, is clearly misleading a much younger man. So that's weird. But I think No Hard Feelings does a good job of A, making the case that this is Maggie's last shot at keeping her house. B, immediately and constantly calling out how weird the situation is, and C, making sure that every time Maddie actually tries to put the moves on Percy, it does not work. Like, I think the first time Maddie and Percy meet is hilarious because of these bizarre dynamics. She's so forward with Percy that it either all goes over his head, or Percy does not want to believe that it's happening. And then when he does start picking up signals, he correctly figures out that this is some sort of scheme and pepper sprays Maddie. Now, Percy has not completely figured out what's going on, but his instincts are correct. So any pretense that Maddie is just picking up some naive 19-year-old is immediately dashed, and that is when the movie starts really working, because Maddie becomes surprisingly sympathetic. She's a surfer who's lived in Montauk her whole life, and for reasons that get explained as the story unfolds, never wants to leave and hates outsiders. And then Percy also becomes more complicated than just nerd who needs to touch grass, and both of them form the beginning of a genuine connection that further confuses everything. Even Percy's parents, played by Laura Benanti and Matthew Broderick, while clearly weird, come off as well-intentioned. It is a credit to writer-director Gene Stupnitsky and writer John Phillips that outside of a couple of jerky Wall Street guys, there really is not anyone to hate. It's easy to take a character like Wesley or Cat Stratford and turn them into a hero, someone we can root for. Sure, they may be a little prickly or silly, but in a story like this, of course they're the good guys. It is much more difficult to take characters like Maddie or the parents who are actively manipulating a 19-year-old virgin and turn them into relatable underdogs. But No Hard Feelings does the work. Over the hour and 43 minutes, we learned so much about these guys and see them grow so much that we cannot help but root for them. And all of that is in service of some excellent comedy. First thing, Jennifer Lawrence is hilarious. Listen, I love Mother as much as the next guy, but it is sort of a shame that she made so much money on those Hunger Games movies and had so much luck with Oscar bait that Jennifer Lawrence never had to do a movie like this because she is amazing at it. And that's besides the fact that Lawrence also produced No Hard Feelings. So a lot of the success in this movie can be laid at her feet. Also, speaking of the team behind the camera, director Gene Stupnitsky, this guy has quite a track record. Directed Bad Teacher, Good Boys, and this, No Hard Feelings. And produced Hello Ladies and Jury Duty. Now I feel like I've got to give Bad Teacher a shot because I really like everything else. I recommend Good Boys to people constantly. But okay, so the writing here is super tight. It has a surprising amount of wit mixed with some absolutely boneheaded characters. While Maddie tends to be pretty good at solving problems, she's also unbelievably bad at avoiding them. All of her plans to seduce Percy fall flat on their face. She also has my favorite line in the movie.
Why do you want to adopt a dog?
Because I can't have dogs of my own.
Which is now the only acceptable answer to that question. And then on the other side, you've got Percy, played by Andrew Barth Feldman, who people will probably know from High School Musical, The Show, The Musical, The Show, or whatever. Feldman is excellent at playing a three-dimensional awkward teenager. He's nervous, but not unreasonably so. You can see that he's looking for something, but he doesn't know what it is. And he is an excellent singer, but I guess that's not a huge surprise considering his theater background. But the physical comedy is where this movie really shines. Visuals like Percy pepper spraying Maddie and then blasting her with a hose, or Maddie driving away with Percy on the hood of her car, or the fight scene that I cannot show here but is very funny. My favorite scene is the one at the high school party with all the kids filming anti-bullying TikToks. When you get there, you'll know why. But yeah, while this premise is bizarre, the performances are excellent and the story has just enough heart to win you over. Jennifer Lawrence got a Best Actress Golden Globe nomination for this and 100% deserved it. Number 3. This one was a big surprise for me. So look at this poster. Title, May December. Term used to describe a big age gap in a relationship. Then you've got Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman standing very close to one another, making very serious faces. Now I don't know about you, but I asked several people and they all said the same thing. This looks like a movie about a tragic lesbian romance between Moore and Portman's characters. Why romance? The title and their positioning. Why tragic? Because it's Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman. Julianne Moore has been nominated for 5 acting Oscars for roles in Boogie Nights, The End of an Affair, Far From Heaven, The Hours, and her one win, Still Alice. Those movies are mostly bummers. Natalie Portman has been nominated for Closer, Jackie, and her winner, Black Swan. So yeah, things don't go great for characters in those movies. And while those movies are interesting and important, they're not always what I'm in the mood for. I tend to like a movie with a sense of humor. So color me surprised when I was talking to Patrick Willems and he asked me if I had seen May December. And I said, I haven't been in the mood. It seems like a bummer. And he asked, what do you think it's about? And I said, two women in a bad relationship where there's a big age gap. And then Patrick gave me the real pitch. And I watched it the next chance I got. So first of all, not a movie about sad lesbians or lesbians at all. That's my first knock against the movie. I don't think this is a very good poster. Because May December, and spoiler alert, skip forward if you are convinced you want to go in blind, because I think it can be an interesting experience. And don't worry, this is not secretly a horror movie, or at least not the jump scare kind. But okay, so May December is about an actress named Elizabeth, played by Natalie Portman, who is shadowing a family as research for a movie. The family consists of a mom named Gracie, played by Julianne Moore, a dad named Joe, played by Charles Melton, and some kids. The May December relationship is the one between Gracie and Joe. We learn that they originally met while they were working in a pet shop when Joe was just 13. They had a short affair, Gracie became pregnant, people found out, and Gracie went to jail. She's now out of jail, and Gracie and Joe have a family with those children, one of which is about to graduate high school. First thing you're going to notice right off the bat, that's a pretty dark story. Sounds like it is, in fact, a bummer. And it does get heavy, but May December does two things to keep everything interesting. First, the two leads, Gracie and Elizabeth, are both insane. You're constantly questioning their motives, their self-awareness. How guilty do any of them actually feel? What do they want to get out of this movie Elizabeth is making? And part of the problem with a bummer is it's somewhat predictable. You know things are going to get worse, you know how these stories go. There is no way you can guess what happens in one of the first scenes with Natalie Portman, because it is so wild. And then second, the movie is scored like a Lifetime movie, which does a lot of things. Sets the audience at a sense of unease, and it reminds us of other Lifetime movies like this real Mary Kay Letourneau Lifetime movie that actually existed. This score forces us to confront that we are the audience for stories like this all the time, in movies and TV shows and social media. Using that familiar score reminds us of that context. And the movie also uses the score to be kind of funny. It's very hard to explain without seeing it, but very early there are a couple of those beats that are pretty easy to pick up on, and it just goes to show you that director Todd Haynes, writers Sammy Birch and Alex Melchank, and musician Marcelo Zarvos are making a deliberate choice to do something you are not expecting, whether that has to do with the score, the editing, the writing, some of the performances. And speaking of performances, listen, I think Robert Downey Jr. was very good in Oppenheimer. In fact, I think many of the Best Supporting Actor nominations for this Oscars were interesting choices. Ryan Gosling as Ken, Mark Ruffalo as Duncan Wedderburn, and Sterling K. Brown as Clifford Ellison. All good performances, but I did not find any of them as compelling as Charles Melton in May December. He is playing a character that is so complex and goes through so many emotions, because over the course of this story, this power struggle between these two people, he's caught in the middle and using this outside perspective to learn about himself. It's wild that he didn't win Best Supporting Actor. It's a crime that he wasn't nominated. But May December was completely snubbed by the Academy because it broke what I'm calling the Nope rule. That is, May December was critical of Hollywood, and the Academy hates that. If your movie is about movies, it better be about how movies are the truest expression of the human spirit and the people that make them are realer heroes than firefighters, because anything less gets you snubbed. I wouldn't even say this movie is as critical of the film industry as Nope. It talks about how the process of taking a story like the one in May December and putting it on screen is inherently somewhat exploitative, and some of the people that want to do that are themselves weirdos, but that's really it. Come on, Hollywood, grow some skin. I don't want to tell you that much more about May December, but I do think there's a case to be made that it is one of the best movies of 2023. It's on Netflix, it's under 2 hours, it's 100% worth your time. Number 4, okay, so The Pope's Exorcist. What is this doing on my favorite movies of 2023 list? Listen, I love a great movie, but also I love a dumb movie. One that knows what it is and is giving it 110%. And The Pope's Exorcist was the that of 2023. Now, in case you haven't seen it, The Pope's Exorcist tells the story of Father Gabriel Amorth, who was indeed a real guy. Father Gabriel was the exorcist for the Diocese of Rome, which made him the exorcist for the Pope. Now, this guy died in 2016, so we're not talking about Assassin's Creed times. He was doing exorcisms at the same time Spielberg was making Jurassic Park. And according to Father Gabriel, and I swear I'm not making this up, over the course of his life, he performed somewhere between 70,000 and 160,000 exorcisms. which is a pretty high number. Father Gabriel died when he was 91, which means on average for his entire life, that's 2 exorcisms a day. So yeah, the guy's very weird. And he wrote a ton of books and became a public figure in the Catholic Church. So that's the real guy. Just guess, which actor could possibly play a man delusional enough to believe he performed at least 60,000 exorcisms over his lifetime? None other than Javert himself, Russell Crowe. Now let me tell you, without Russell Crowe, this movie would be unwatchable. But his performance as Father Gabriel is electric. First of all, Crowe has what feels like a preposterous Italian accent that he fully commits to. It's an accent I've never seen Crowe try before, and we just did a movie where Crowe took a shot at Greek, which I've heard from Greek people is not that bad. And I don't know if this one is actually accurate, but my guess is probably not. They compensate by making him the most Italian guy ever. He rides a little scooter, he enjoys a little cappuccino, he's one step from challenging Luca to a bike race. But also, he's a really likable character. Maybe it's the accent, maybe it's just the general vibe, joking with the nuns, yelling at the mean priest, but you cannot help wanting to hang out with this guy, at least for a couple of hours. Here's the pitch for the movie. Father Gabriel does a lot of exorcisms. However, he knows that they're mostly fake. He only does them because if someone is having a breakdown and then he says they're fixed, they might get better and then get actual psychiatric help. So right off the bat, I'm in. Interesting. But then he gets a call about a real possession and has to go do that. But don't worry, this demon is not actually scary. It's like if a demon saw the Exorcist movie and tried to do that without really knowing why. It just has the kid say sex stuff and scratch things on his body like hell. It's adorable. And that's as far as I'm going with this one. But the best part of this movie is that just when you get tired of the exorcism and you look at your watch and go, are we doing another hour of this? The movie shifts gears and now it's Da Vinci Code. And then after that wears out its welcome, the movie shifts gears again. It never has time to be boring. And the ending is insane. This movie led to my favorite mostly nitpicking episode of 2023. I tell everyone, invite your friend over, make some popcorn, have a drink or whatever you're into and watch this movie. It's not Cats, but it's sitting in that sweet spot where the movie is both incredibly stupid and taking itself completely seriously. So for that reason, The Pope's Exorcist is my dumbest movie of 2023. Number 5. So here we are, my favorite movie of 2023. Wait a second, more favorite than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? You love that. Maybe not more favorite, but at least tied, because my favorite movie of 2023 was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. I am constantly shocked by how many people I talk to who would be into this movie who don't even know it exists. I cannot help but think it has something to do with the strikes making publicity near impossible. Probably also doesn't help that the Ninja Turtles have an abysmal movie track record. Truly some horrifying costumes. But whatever the reason, it is a shame because this movie was incredible. Genuinely everything I want from one of these. First of all, it looks gorgeous. I think it's the first big animated movie since Spider-Verse that is innovating in the spirit of Spider-Verse without doing largely the same thing as Spider-Verse. That is to say, I don't think it looks like any other animated movie of at least this generation. As ambitious as movies like Elemental or even Boy and the Heron were, they looked like Pixar or Miyazaki movies. Mutant Mayhem seemed to invent a new aesthetic, and that aesthetic was gross. It's in the spirit of the early Eastman and Laird comics without necessarily imitating them. With the exception of April, all of the New Yorkers are covered in imperfections, asymmetrical faces, their heads are askew, their bodies are all sorts of different shapes. No two people look the same, and this makes sense. The turtles are our protagonists. They look normal. It's the humans that are monsters. Especially when we see Splinter's backstory where he's shunned by the people of Times Square. And speaking of the turtles, I was so impressed by how differently each of the turtles looked. Obviously, they still look like they were part of the same species, but even if you take away the weapons, this is the first time I've been able to immediately identify each turtle based solely on their silhouette. And that goes a long way when 4 of them are fighting in the same scene. I also love the different coloring for each turtle. Again, they were part of the same group, but they weren't all just copy-paste versions of one another. And obviously, the mutant designs are fantastic. As someone who was somewhat familiar with the Turtles Rogues Gallery, I remember being skeptical of the amount of villains they were throwing into this. Could we conceivably keep track of all of these characters? And what benefit does front-loading this universe with mutants really create? But I appreciate this go-for-broke energy that Jeff Rowe, Kyle Spears, Seth Rogen, and Evan Goldberg were bringing to Mutant Mayhem. We may only get one of these regardless of the quality. What's the point in holding anything back? And even though this movie was packed with mutants, the sequels have plenty of enemies to focus on, from the obvious Foot Clan to the Utroms. And I think the giant cast of mutants served a clear narrative purpose. They were a foil for the Turtles, a family filled with seemingly well-meaning mutants being led by a human-fearing mutant. If only Superfly and Bebop and Rocksteady show up in Act 2, it doesn't sell Superfly's philosophy. But if he has already amassed an eclectic group of friendly mutants, maybe he's onto something. Maybe this is the way the turtles should behave too. Sure, the rhino is scary, but the manta ray and the gecko seem chill. I'll be honest, I try to organize these starting with the simple stuff and ending with what I believe to be the most important part of the movie, where it really succeeded, the hard sell. And with this one, I cannot decide which of these three is more impressive or more important to understanding why I love this movie, so I'm just gonna go in alphabetical order over here. F is for fight scenes. The fight scenes are spectacular. I think they're the best of the year. Sure, Guardians 3 has that terrific hallway fight, and Spider-Verse did some really creative things with the spot, but like, every action scene in this movie is one of the best I've ever seen. The big three, no diggity, was so stylish. Cutting between different bosses and the different turtles, emphasizing each turtle's different style and energy. Then there's the finale, which we will get to, but the standout, Splinter versus the TCRI. As a big fan of Jackie Chan, live action and animated, I cannot think of the last time I saw his style so faithfully emulated. Splinter is always on the back foot, partially because he hasn't done this before, and also partially because he's just an old man. So right there you have a compelling setup. And at first, Splinter solves his problems like any Jackie Chan protagonist, scurrying through the environment to avoid soldiers, playing the different attackers against each other, and then the office chair. If you are not familiar with the great Jackie Chan fights, just look at this bit from Police Story. Jackie, backed into a corner and severely outnumbered, needs to find a way to take down multiple attackers. And his solution involves taking an everyday item, in this case a clothing rack in the mall, and turning it into a weapon. But not just picking it up and flinging it around, improvising a routine that plays specifically to that object. He hides behind the clothes, rolls around using the wheels, uses its structure like a hoop to topple a goon. A great Jackie Chan fight scene usually starts with Jackie hoping to find a weapon, but being forced to settle for an everyday object. So consider the office chair. Splinter tosses it at goons, sits back into the chair to brace a fall, and uses the elevating arm as a 5-wheeled hydraulic punch. It's only a few seconds, but it touched me. Jackie Chan is getting older. He's currently 69, and he isn't even in the Kung Fu Panda movies anymore. So seeing Jackie get the opportunity to, through Master Splinter, one of the greatest martial arts masters in all of popular culture, bring to life a new Jackie Chan fight scene in the style of the classics, it was beautiful. K is for kids. It is wild that in 2023, the biggest innovation a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie could muster was let the teenagers be teenagers. It is impossible to watch this movie and not immediately feel it. The energy coming from the Turtles is different from any of the cartoons or live action movies or even that other animated Turtles movie that sort of holds up, because all those versions of the Turtles were voiced by adults. And far be it to me to complain that Ben Schwartz or Josh Brenner are putting in great Turtles performances, but the very best thing an adaptation can do, in my opinion, is something new. And this was new. And why does this matter in the story? Well, first of all, it's the title of the movie, so it should probably be part of the movie. But more importantly, they sound like kids, which means we were able to understand their mistakes, getting in over their head, falling in with the wrong crowd, lying to a parent. It's the sort of thing that might make you less likely to empathize with an adult, but makes total sense for a child. And they not only cast teenagers, but they let them act like teenagers. Apparently, a lot of the back and forth between the Turtles was improvised, and when you hear it, it's like, of course the script doesn't say bacon, egg, and cheese crosstalk for a page. They apparently got all 4 Turtles into one booth together and just gave them a script and let them go. And the kids had total freedom to change lines on the fly, so for instance, if something didn't sound quite right, they'd come up with the actual way a teenager would say it, explain it to Seth and the team, and then boom, that's in the movie. And man, was I bummed that these guys did not get to take that victory lap on the talk shows and the red carpet, because each of these performances was special. You've got Nick Cantu as Leonardo with a wonderfully stiff energy in a much harder spot than any Leonardo before him, because not only was he a teenager, but his brothers were messing with him like real teenagers do. Then Shimon Brown Jr. played Michelangelo as the lovable dork who can't keep his mouth shut. And just in case anyone's curious, Michelangelo is my favorite Ninja Turtle. Micah Abbey played the first Donatello I can remember who actually felt like he could hang with the rest of them. And then Brady Noon, one of the good boys, played the classic kicks first, asks questions later Raphael with a ton of energy. The composition of the Turtles is so important. Their chemistry, how well each one fits into their archetypes, and the decision to cast actual kids and give those kids room to make these roles their own turned this whole movie into something completely new. Also, Mr. Beast and Tech Knight were apparently there. And finally, X is for, well, okay. I'm gonna say what might be the most controversial thing I've ever said. A sentence that I can barely form. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem is the best X-Men movie ever made. Yes. Now, it might not be the best movie ever made with X-Men. That's probably X2 or First Class or Logan. but it is the best expression of the idea of the X-Men in one package on screen. Because at its heart, this is a story about a group of mutant children with special powers who want to fight to protect a world that hates and fears them. And Superfly is a fantastic Magneto, the charismatic leader who has seen the worst of humanity and knows there's only one way to protect his family. Until you meet Superfly, you expect him to be dangerous, but it isn't until he threateningly steps out of his car, flanked by the two mutant villains, Bebop and Rocksteady, that you realize what the Turtles are in for. They're about to get killed by these huge mutants. And Superfly is on the same page until he sees the Turtles and recognizes they're like him. And he immediately switches gears. Superfly and the rest of the mutants treat the Turtles like part of their family. There's no threat of violence or ultimatum, just the good news that he's figured out a way for the mutants to live peacefully. Everything's gonna be okay. And that's what makes Superfly a great Magneto. He doesn't even kind of think he's the villain. He knows who the villain is. And he genuinely loves other mutants, wants them to thrive. The problem is he cannot see another way, but that means that every turn Superfly is giving the Turtles a chance to join them, or leave. It isn't until the very end that Superfly actually starts actively fighting the Turtles. But what I love about Mutant Mayhem is how it squares this circle. Okay, so the people hate and fear the mutants. The good mutants need to stop the evil mutant before he kills everyone. And eventually the good mutants give up on being accepted and just focus on saving people because it's the right thing to do. Lesson learned. But what does this mean for mutants? Is this another story about stoically suffering and fighting this eternal struggle of ideology that will never ultimately lead to anywhere but mutant kind's destruction? Is there another way? I remember watching this bit in the theater for the first time. The Turtles tried to toss the demutantifying agent into Super Duper Fly's blowhole, but he catches him and tosses Splinter and the demutifier onto the street. And we get that scene again. Splinter alone, surrounded by confused New Yorkers. And I remember thinking, come on. And one New Yorker comes through and helps Splinter because April told the truth about the mutants and the people listened. And I said to myself, they got it. And then we get one big action scene where every new mutant friend and every brand of New Yorker, from cabbie to bodega owner, work together to get the demutifier to the Turtles. Mutant Mayhem presents the path forward that the X-Men movies never do. It makes the case for how the mutants can stop being hated and feared. And it's not just do enough good deeds until you've earned enough points to be accepted. It is help as many people as you can because it is the right thing to do, and eventually one of them will be in a position to tell the rest of the people the truth and the people will listen. Genuinely, I don't think an X-Men movie can do a better ending than that. We even get the New Yorkers throwing tire irons at the Green Goblin bit. Because as much as I love the X-Men, and specifically the X movies, they very frequently forget to meaningfully involve the humans who hate and fear the mutants. Sure, you got an evil one and some soldiers, but they never change. Their actions never influence the mutants' actions. And I think if we're taking the X-Men thing at face value, the idea that Magneto is wrong and Xavier is right, no movie has made the point for Xavier better than this one. So yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem is my favorite movie of 2023, tied with Guardians of the Galaxy 3, of course. And Anatomy of a Fall. I really did like that one. But that was 2023. I want to talk about a movie from 2024. One of the most talked about movies of 2024, Madam Web. But I don't just want to make a video tearing Madam Web down. I think it's more interesting than that, because Madam Web has one bizarre problem that I've never seen in another movie like it. A problem that I needed to dig into, which you can watch in my next video, Why Does Madam Web Sound So Weird? That'll be on YouTube eventually, but it is live right now on this video sponsor, Nebula. Nebula is a creator-created subscription streaming platform where we are free to do whatever we want. That means everything is ad-free, videos go up early, my other channel, the Nando Cut, is up there now too, and Nebula is where we've got all of our exclusive stuff. It's where all the cool stuff goes. I've got some older videos that are only on Nebula fan casting some obscure X-Men, but one new thing that we did that I think is so cool is we have these awesome new landing pages. So if you go to nebula.tv/culture, because that's the one I fit into, culture, this is culture, Nebula gets divided into different sections. There's basically like TV channels. And as someone who has been a part of Nebula since the beginning and been using it since the beginning, I think this is a great way to get you more of the videos you're looking for. And a subscription to Nebula is super affordable. It's $50 a year. But with the code NANDO, N-A-N-D-O, you get a year of Nebula for just under $2.50 a month. It's an incredible deal. Go to Nebula, look around. I'm sure you'll find something you like. So check out that Mad Web video. Let me know what you think. As always, I've got to say thank you to everybody who continues to support the channel on Patreon, everybody that watches these videos early and ad-free on Nebula, everybody who listens to my podcast, Mostly Nitpicking, everybody that follows me on Twitter. I'm Nando V Movies all over the internet. That's all I got. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.